and let's jump into this. So, Josh,
Yes.
leadership.
Yes,
Go for
let's
it.
do it. First things first, if you hear a bell or something in the background, I've got a 8-month-old Doberman whose favorite toy has a very loud bell in it.
Yes, we love dogs.
So I tried to tire her out as much as possible, but her favorite toy caught her eye. So just, ignore that. All right, so a couple of ground rules here for this discussion. I am not going to get into the argument or debate of leadership versus management. That's been talked about, discussed, blogged, blah, 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 a bajillion times.
Yep.
If you want to go down that path, there's plenty of stuff that's out there for you to go and make that happen, but we're not going to tackle that here. A lot of people have handled that. That's not where we're at. We are trying to focus forward and say, how do I evolve as a leader? What are the things that I can do? That's what this is going to be about.
Excellent.
A reason why this is so important to me is I didn't have very many good leaders as I went through my career.
Okay.
And I believe that is unfortunately true for many people.
Mm-hmm.
So the only examples they have as they're going through and establishing their career and deciding what path do I want to go down? Do I want to be a leader? Sometimes the examples are pretty rough, and then that's all you know. So then as you get promoted into a role like that, you default to the things that you know because you can at least know it works or it does a thing. And I'm trying to stop that cycle because it really is a cycle that just continues and continues. The way I tried to shape my leadership style was not with a mentor, but with a whole bunch of anti-mentors. So I took all the things people did.
Anti-pattern mentors.
Yeah. And I said, okay, when I get to be the whatever, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. It still meant I was terrified when I got that first really big gig because it's like, all right, well, everything's on you now, buddy. You have all these crazy ideas of what could work. Now let's test them and find out. So that's what it is. It is an evolution. You are never going to be able to, it's just like shipping a product, right? It's never going to be 100% done. Where you
it's a journey, right? It's a journey.
You got to get it out there.
But the anti-pattern thing is really interesting. Tell us one anti-pattern. I know you got, I'm breaking your cadence a little bit, but
that's okay.
What was one major anti-pattern that you looked at that you stay away from?
Microsoft project. Early in my career, I had a director that I worked for that every Friday afternoon, I would have to sit in her office and we would look at the Microsoft project and see where things were at. And we would shuffle the minutest details that are out there and it just got hey, wait a minute, we're two of the highest paid people here.
And we're looking at this.
Yeah. And we're spending a full person day doing this, and we do it every week. And there's all this hand wringing and teeth are being gnashed. It just was not, I didn't see the value in it. So that drove me away from it. And I said, that's not how I want to lead a project ever.
Micromanagement.
So that pushed me into Agile.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, keep going, man.
Very
anti-pattern, MS project.
Yes. Okay, so Agile leadership has nothing to do with your team being Agile if they use SAFe or Scrum or Kanban or anything like that. It's about the things that we talked about, the evolution that you're going to have to go through as you evolve, as the company changes, as your team grows or shrinks. You're going to have to evolve and become a different leader over time. And while Agile leadership and the process of running Agile in your organization should usually happen in unison, there's nothing that says you can't become a better Agile leader, even if you're not in an Agile company yet. The biggest thing, of course, is just like building a product. You have to respond to the needs of your customers. And your customers are ultimately the people that are part of your organization. How are you taking care of them? Are they happy? Are they leaving? Are you struggling to hire people? Those are all signals that you have to respond to. There's so many places that I've seen and coached and helped where I walk in and we just can't hire people. It's this market. We can't do anything. It's all of the oh, the big boys are taking,
Yes.
the Googles, the Apples, like they're
The
taking all the best
excuses,
people.
right?
Yeah,
You get
yeah,
the litany of excuses. This
yeah.
is
So
why we
it's like,
can't hire people.
yeah. So we're just going to give up. Like, we're just going to say we're never going to hire another whatever we're trying to hire because Google's hiring it also. Like, then we should just shut the company down. Like, if we're a product-based company and our value is ultimately created by the teams that build the value, be it product or support or engineering itself, like that's, if you can't do that, and if you're just going to roll over and give up because it's hard to hire people, then either the company shouldn't exist or maybe you shouldn't be in that role. So that's a harsh reality that folks have to deal with. And another part of Agile leadership and the Agile mindset within a company is you are a part of the system. You are a cog in the wheel. You are not the person that's driving the system. Everybody has roles and responsibilities of where they're focusing. Your role is focused on how do I maximize the value that comes out of this system of people? What do I do? How do I make sure that that happens? We have people that are going to build great products. We have people that are going to design great products. We have people that are going to make sure we scale like you can't believe. I don't need to be in that. I just need to make sure that people are there to do that. And I give them whatever they need to do their job and to do it well. Now, the most common mistake that I see from leaders in an Agile space is they over-rotate on self-directed teams. And they take their knowledge and experience that the company paid a lot of money to have, and they just put it on a shelf. And they say, well, we're going to let the team figure it out. Well, that's a team thing. But we hired you because you were an expert in QA to come and help direct where things go. That doesn't mean you come in with an iron fist and say, thou shalt do this. Now, maybe there's a time where that makes sense. Maybe it's a brand new team and everybody's just trying to figure things out. And the most important thing that you can do is say, okay, I'm going to take care of how we do QA, how we do our code reviews, all of that stuff. You guys focus on being a great team and working on that and writing great software. Then as they evolve, then you start to broaden the guardrails and let them redefine those things. So you have to understand how a team evolves from they need clear direction because everything's new, and you just asking the team to figure everything out is not fair to them.
It's interesting. That's it. Now, how do you handle at that starting phase? How do you handle them not feeling like just a cog? Making sure that they know as they mature, they're going to get more empowerment. Is there techniques to do for that, for reinforcing that?
To me, it's transparency, right? Of just saying like, hey, I am doing this right now because this is what we need to do what we're here to do, which is create value for our customers. And we are not here to build great software. We are here to create value. And me taking these things off of your plate right now is going to let us do that. Now we'll slowly put them back on your plate. And then, of course, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And if you say that and don't do it, then you've lost the team.
Okay. So if you're going to say, I'm going to own this.
Yeah.
And you're transparent about it,
yes.
And you don't own it.
Yeah. Or yeah, if you don't own it or you never let go.
Oh, the never let go thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Good
yeah,
point.
Then the team's gonna be like, what a jerk, right? He was just saying things so he could control it. And it's clear this isn't what I thought it was. And then surprise, surprise, you'll probably start to have a turnover problem.
Is this kind of like a leader as a host instead of a servant leader in some ways?
Yes, I've never heard the leader as a host approach.
Yeah. So basically the idea here is the host has responsibility, but they also serve. Yeah. Right. And so the host can then decide what areas of the party are they going to attack? And then what area of the party are they going to let the interaction flow and ebb and so forth? So it kind of ties into that a bit, is this idea of, all right, if I'm going to take ownership of something, I'm going to host this. I'm going to own these parts of it for a while. You guys grow. Instead of just saying, I'm going to be a servant leader, which, like you're saying, that kind of drove me crazy, because what you're saying is I'm not going to provide any value.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many of those new leaders do it with the best intent because they want to enable the teams. They want the teams to become that, but the team is not in a position to be able to do that. So you're actually doing more damage by being completely hands-off, and the team's not ready to be hands-off.
Yes.
Think of it like a child riding a bike. Right?
Yeah.
There's all the right, they're learning all of these things, and for you to just like get on a bike and push them and say, good luck, kid. Like that's a bad plan.
You're gonna have social services coming to your house when you do that.
Exactly. But you were there and you hold the bike very firm, and then maybe you just hold the back of the bike, and then maybe you don't actually touch the bike, but you're there, so your child feels safe, and then eventually they're on their own. So you have to go through that process of helping them along the way.
We got a question from Christina, which is really good. How do you determine what the team is or is not ready for yet? How do you make that determination?
So every new team to me starts at 0. And the difference with each team is how they accelerate through maturity phases. So everybody resets, even if we add a person to a team. Now we've altered the system. Let's reset. Let's get back to basics. Let's operate like this, make sure everybody's in sync. And that team might burn through that in like 2 weeks. Now, a new team, completely new from scratch, is going to take longer. So I don't play the game of trying to guess where a team is at. Yeah. I start them at the beginning. And if they bust through that and they get to mature, whatever label you want to use, in 2 weeks, in 6 weeks, whatever, you have to let the team evolve, or dogs bark in the background.
I love that. All right, another question, which is a really good question tied to this. Pamela says, if you start out giving the team all the autonomy to self-organize, how do you bring guardrails in after the fact? Like, you made a mistake.
Yeah.
You said, I'm going to be a servant leader, self-organize, I'm here to coach, and things are falling apart.
I'm a super transparent person, and I tell the team, this is how I'm going to lead. I tell the team that I am a part of the system, and my job lives in this greater piece that is us. And if it's falling apart, I bet your team recognizes it's not working. It's not comfortable. And
they know, right?
And they just want things to be better. So one of the things that has bothered me, and Pamela, I'm not suggesting that you do this at all, so please don't take this as something that you said. I've been so many places where leaders try and make changes without like educating or talking to the team, and they think like the team doesn't know, or they can't handle it.
Oh man, it drives me absolutely crazy. That's one of my pet peeves. I can't stand it.
Yeah, it's just so insulting, right?
Yes.
Like, did you hire smart people or not? If you hired smart people, then like they can handle it. If you didn't hire smart people, then you got to fix your hiring.
I have a consulting gig, and my gosh, the person does this all the time, and it's like I have to coach him on how that affects the rest of the members of the team.
Yeah,
so that's a really good point for people to present, which is, don't think you know everything. Don't involve them before you make changes so they know what's going on, the transparency level. So we have another question, but this one might be too big right now from a high level standpoint. What kind of qualities should the Agile leader have? Do you want to hold off on that as you go through your flow, or you want to hit that now?
Let me circle back to that. Make sure we circle back to that, because
I will. I'll make sure.
Okay. So I talked about being a part of the system, and just as we talked about with products, where you're never going to be done, so don't try and gold plate it. Don't let it get, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? That's a real thing. And make sure you do the same thing with the processes that you set up. What I talk about is you have to have the minimum viable bureaucracy. So what that means is you have to have this balance of, I need to enable autonomy within my teams, but I also have to make sure there's alignment, and you have to try and keep those in balance. And let me tell you, that's a tenuous balance to try and maintain. And if you over process something, then autonomy is going to go down, alignment's going to go up. And like, maybe your bosses are happy, but the team is not happy. So you have to work to balance that out. So always think about what's the least amount of process I can put in place to address the problem we have right now.
So is that an MVB?
MVB is what I call it. Yep.
All right. I love it. That's a new thing for me, and I absolutely love it. MVP.
Yep.
So when you say MVP to people now, as you coach them, how do they react? What do they think? Do they get scared? Do they get excited? Do they even understand?
B as in boy or P as in Peter?
Is it a minimum viable bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
MVP.
I don't normally lead with that. I follow with that. I talk about like I have a slide that has a big balance or scale on it with the two sides, and I show autonomy, alignment, and they're in perfect balance. I say, this is what we're after. This is where life is really good for everybody, but it's really hard and it's very delicate. And then just to shorten the thing, I'm like, oh, by the way, I call this MVB, just so we can talk about it without having to say, oh, that scale thing Josh talked about.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where if I lead with the imagery, people get it and they understand, and it's not like, oh gosh, he's one of this guy, like he's got all the acronyms and blah blah blah. Like, so that's a dangerous thing.
Is that part of leadership? Is that a turnoff? I mean, did you start talking about the acronyms and showing like pretending like or acting like you're the expert? Are you seeing that become a turnoff? Because I knew a programmer, really smart engineer guy. He couldn't stand Agile.
Yeah,
and it turned him off because of the jargon, the whole bit. What's your thoughts there as a leader when you're coming in and trying to support the team?
The first Agile conference I ever went to, there was a presentation by Agile Dad. I don't know his name, but he told a great story of he got hired by the military and he got called into the office of like a 4-star general that was responsible for the project or product, whatever they were building. And you imagine a 4-star general, tough, strong guy, very aggressive. And he calls Agile Dad into his office, like, listen, I hear you're an Agile expert. That's BS. We don't do that here in the military. You're going to operate the way we operate, and that's how it's going to work. I don't care what your experiences are, what we hired you for, you're going to do this. And he handled the situation like a wizard. And he said, okay, I understand you. Let me just talk about some of the cadences of meetings we're going to have and make sure you're comfortable with that. Every 2 weeks, I'm going to have you in. We're going to sit down. You're going to look at what we've done since the last time we met. You're going to give me some feedback. I'm going to use that feedback to adjust before the next time I come back in 2 weeks. And then we'll just keep doing that again, just so you're aware of what's going on and you can help us make sure we land in that right direction, which you have a clear vision for. And he pounded the desk. He's like, I like that. We should do that. So it was one of those things. If you talk about the value that it brings, then people latch on because there's a ton of value that's created in the way we operate. But so often there's 2 things that lead to that, is that we're kind of lazy and we take the easy way out by saying the 3 letters as opposed to explaining in full depth.
Yep.
And unfortunate reality is that there are too many people that don't actually have the depth of knowledge that's required to have that discussion. It's something they've heard about, something they read about. Maybe they went and got a class and they've never had a chance to practice it. Yeah. So having that practitioner experience of being able to put it in the process makes it hard when you get pushed on, well, why are we really doing this?
Yeah.
You're like, well, I read that if you do this and this and this, then that, that kind of starts to chip away at people believing that it's going to work.
That's really interesting. It's almost like you're so good, you teach somebody just how we just start working this way without putting any words on it besides we're working this way, here's how we fit our work into it. And lo and behold, next thing you know, they're operating iteratively, they're doing burn downs. I mean, they're doing all these things, but you didn't necessarily throw that all at once. You just had them working, teaching them how to work in a certain way.
Yep. It's unfortunately, Agile has been misused in many ways. So another M acronym that I created is minimum bearable Scrum, right? So I think
I'll talk about that, because here's the thing: the word Agile is starting to get a negative connotation.
Yes,
it's starting to get people. We had someone talk about a friend who's a 30-year engineer who thinks it's the stupidest thing known to mankind. And I think what happens, he's probably naturally Agile, so he just thinks it's stupid, but somebody has to be taught that. But because of that, tell me about this is it MVS?
Minimum Viable Scrum.
MVS. So tell me about that.
So that is what I use to describe what most companies call Agile or Scrum. doing Agile or Scrum or Kanban or Safe or any of those things is hard because you're asking the organization to fundamentally change the way it operates.
Yeah.
And one of the big hurdles you have is the people that are there didn't sign up to work like that. They signed up to work the way it is now. So you're telling them, hey, we know you came here because you like this. Well, we're actually going to make it this.
I talked about that back I used to talk about that early 2000s about that. When people are trying to bring Agile to the government, I'm like, who goes to work for the federal government?
Yeah.
They go there for that structure, the bureaucracy. They fit it. They like that.
Yep.
And then you're trying to tell them that now what you bought in for no longer works. It's like you're telling a baseball player who's hit 300 to bat left now.
Yeah, and what we have rewarded you for years or decades, now that thing that you've gotten really good at, we're going to want you to operate differently.
Yeah.
So and that's what sticks in people's brains. They had a bad experience, a lot like the leadership issues that I talked about at the start. Is there's a bad experience people have with Agile, so now it does become a bit of a bad word, and people start to recoil a little bit, like, ooh, oh no, Agile transformation. Like, I've been through one of those. Like, everybody's been through one of those once, and it's like, oh gosh, that's terrible. So
everybody's been through it. Once.
Yep.
So you're go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. Just to circle back on that leader being a part of the process and a part of the system, is you have to be patient. I really, really struggled with this for close to a decade, like no joke, a decade. I grew up as an engineer, so I was used to, hey, if there's a problem, I go in, I find the code, I fix it, I commit it, I deploy it, everything's done. Groups of people don't have a config file that you can go and update and check in, and they operate differently right after that. You have to be comfortable and patient with understanding how people and groups of people shed old habits and build new ones. I never call them bad habits because they were right when they started it. And so now you have to lead people through that change and that change management of, okay, we're doing this historically, but we're evolving to this. I'm here to help you through that. And one of the most important things you can do with people going through that is help them relax, because engineers like me think they can change everything right now. And they really think they can change themselves fast.
Yes.
So helping people get patient, celebrate the small wins, knowing the destination is there. You're going to have a big party at the end, but if you don't celebrate along the way, if you don't celebrate those little victories, it's going to weigh you down, and you're going to feel like you're not making a difference, but you are in so many different ways. It's just the victories are a little bit smaller, and you stack them up, and at the end, it's party time.
In what way is it party time?
It's life gets smoother. The system begins to run itself, and the finish line that I look for when I know I've helped shape a good culture as a leader is when I hear the culture being reinforced, not by me. Yes. So I'm walking past a stand-up and I hear somebody correct somebody and reference a core value, or reference our vision, reference the mission we have, and use that for actionable steps within the organization. Once you've done that, once you've led and empowered the people, educated them on what all these things are, and it's starting to, I hate the word, but I don't know a better one, to police itself, then that's a really good place. It doesn't mean you can, kick your heels up and go play golf forever. You still, there's still a lot of work that has to be done, but that's when
you can focus on the value work. This is what I think, so for far too long, we think that doing processes and doing things is work. And we got to, like you're saying, once you get the system working, then it's time to think.
Yeah. Oh,
it's time to create.
Yes.
It's time to test. And I think that forever, that's been our big problem, is we don't teach people how to stop and think.
Yeah. And I have a story, because I went through this painfully. I was hired as a CTO for a mobile startup, and every day was a disaster, right? We had 200 plus apps in all 3 app stores. So you can imagine all of the things going on. You know,
I remember one app in the App Store and how much of a nightmare it was.
Yeah, so it was just a pain, and just fires needed to put out all the time. And after a year and a half, I was sitting at my desk and I found myself staring at my inbox, waiting for a fire to come in that I could respond to. And I peeked around.
You're just reactive.
Yeah,
You're just waiting for something to happen.
I didn't know what to do with myself. And I poked my head around the cube and I said to, I believe she was the director of DevOps. And I said, we put out all the fires. Now what? Luckily I hire super smart people. And she's like, well, then you need to go be the CTO. Like, that's your job.
Yeah,
go do that. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So, because it was one of those things where I've had labels like that before, but I never had been in an organization where all the fires were out and I could actually do my job. So I adopted this approach of, I would grab an apple every day at lunch and I would walk around downtown Raleigh and think like, okay, like what does this role look like? What should I be doing?
Visualize and think. And teaching people, we had a couple of conversations about that. And I was saying for the anti-patterns, visualize you doing the opposite. You don't have to lead initially, visualize it, see how you would react. The time to think, Josh, we don't train on it. Right. I had a mentor who and I say this a lot in the presentation, I might have said it in one of the ones we had, but he used to get excited when he saw me at my desk reading.
Yeah.
How do people react now if you saw someone on their desk reading?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
But he said that, Dave, I knew that you were going to come up with something new. You were going to try this and I'm like, I wrote an article about taking time to think. So how as a leader, do you help people take time to think? How do you coach them on that? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing, especially having led so many engineering teams. And again, anti-patterns, they worked in companies where they were taught that they are only able to create value when their hands are on the keyboard punching away.
Yeah. Yes, that's it.
And as an agile organization, there were a lot of things that we needed our engineer brains to help focus on. We have this story and we've never done this thing before. Like, we should probably do an architectural spike to figure out how we want to make this a reality. So time on a whiteboard, time researching, time reading, time doing all of that. It took me, depending on the person, 6 to 12 months to get every engineer to shed those old habits of like
6 to 12 months of reinforcement.
Yeah. Because there's so many, there's so many pieces of baggage that people are like scared looking over their shoulder, like, oh, is someone going to see me? And then of course the problem you have is people not inside of your organization that are a part of the company, that maybe this department in the company operates this way and it has to be hands on keyboard or whatever. It doesn't have to be, but that's how they run it. Yeah. And then they walk by and see your people sitting on a couch thinking. Yeah. And that doesn't,
they're not doing anything. What's going on? Josh, your organization sucks, man.
Yes.
Why aren't they pounding out? So you have to focus on the outcomes. You got to present them. Here's the outcomes associated with that thinking time, right?
Yep.
And then the lower attrition rate, because I want to think.
Yep.
That's the knowledge worker. What are we, knowledge workers? Right? That's what we think. We solve problems. We create, but that saddens me that it takes up to 6 to 12 months based on your experience to break that habit.
Yeah, to get it where I had to stop reminding somebody.
Yeah. Hey, did you take time to think today? Did you process things? Did you evaluate? Did you do a decision bubble and think about different causes and effects of what you're working on today? I mean, those type of things. Wow.
Yeah, just as I built out the spaces there, I built a diverse set of working options, and it was not just desks. Of course, we had desks and things like that, but to get people comfortable to go work on a couch or to go have a discussion on a couch or to stand at a whiteboard for an hour and a half trying to figure something out and not worry about it. Not worry about
getting in trouble.
Sure. Yeah.
So Anne asked, how do you normalize thinking and collaborating as part of the production? How do you normalize it? What did you, so you took 6 to 12 months, you gave us some techniques, but like 1 or 2 things that you can say, this is what I did?
So when I build a culture, there's two things that I have to reinforce. I have to reinforce what isn't permitted, and then I have to reinforce what I want to promote. So when I see somebody doing like that, doing something like that, I promote the crap out of it.
Like Steve did for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I make sure they understand this is exactly the thing that we're looking for. I make sure others around them see and hear that as we go through a demo or something and we talk about, hey, this is the thing that we built. I'll be that annoying guy in the background and say like, hey, can you talk us through how you came up with how you're going to figure this out, and just get them to talk about it. Like there's sneaky things that you can do to show, hey, this is amazing. And this is under the covers. This is how they got here, because they might think, oh, they did it the same way I've always done it, as opposed to we spent 90% of the time on the whiteboard and then we figured out what the answer was and we coded it in like a half hour.
Yeah.
So that, yeah.
And so in sales, this is so important in sales, looking at the same mindset is you're closing all these sales, but the process by which you got to the close. Have you thought through that so you can replicate it? Sit down and let's critically think about sale X. What was the starting point? How did it mature? Where did you get to? Then you can think about that in other sales. So I do, on the sales side, I really try to reinforce that idea of being able to think through what transpired to get to the sale, so then you can apply that maybe to become more productive. But they're not used to any of this. Used to make the next call, but they're realizing that they have to discover. There's a discovery process in everything, right? In the engineering work, there's that discovery process. Even in sales work, there's a discovery process by then which you can become, like you said, operate more effective and efficiently, and then allowing you to sell something new or allowing you to build something new. It's interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to circle back to
kind of qualities.
Yeah. And I'm going to talk about the outcomes, and then I'll get into the qualities that help deliver on the outcomes. So I thought about like, these are the things you have to be great at to be a really good Agile leader. You have to become a hiring sorceress or wizard.
Okay.
Like
the hiring thing.
Yeah. The people are the things that make the difference.
You know how many people are going to web seminars and hiring for the Agile culture now? I'm telling you that it's a hot topic right now. It's interesting. Keep going. Sorry for interrupting. Yeah.
So that has to be top of your brain. And again, that's easy for me to say and, say, hey, get better at hiring. Like that doesn't really help. One of the things that can enable that is becoming really intentional about your culture and defining it. Culture is, again, one of those words like Agile that is overloaded and means a lot of different things in a lot of different places. That's why I break it down to this is what we permit and what we promote. This is, and in that middle, it defines that's who an employee here at this company is. And you get really crystal clear about it. You talk about it up front, you interview on those qualities and things like that. So having a clear culture, what happened in the place where we were best at this was we became a destination job, and we didn't really have to go find people. We would post a job and we get a couple thousand people.
That's where they wanted to be.
And like 100 of like rock stars. And it got to it. The hardest part about hiring in that spot was like, oh my gosh, how do we choose? And there were a couple times after I made the mistake of choosing where I said, let's not choose. Let's hire all of them, right? Because it's hard to find really good people. So if we have 3 people that are really good, I would go and do my job as a leader and say like, listen, we found a bit of a gold mine here. We should invest here. So I need some extra money to get these folks on board because the difference that it's going to make. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's not,
very
it's
hard
not
to
something. Yeah. It is not something that you're going to get right the first try.
But if you're a strong leader, then you can influence, and now you can influence on the top side. Now, one thing I want to mention to the folks, even if you're not the hiring manager, a lot of cases you're part of the hiring process. So you can do exactly what Josh is saying and just providing feedback back to the final hiring manager, and doing it respectfully and doing it succinctly and doing it the way Josh talked about. So just because you're not hiring someone doesn't mean that you're not part of the interview process. All of you have been part of the interview process. I can't think of there can't be someone on this call that hasn't been part of an interview process for someone on their team.
And my secret trick for getting hiring to really roll is I treat it like a product. And every person is its own little sprint. How did it go? What worked? What didn't? What should we change? A key metric for me, because the hiring process is expensive,
it's very expensive, yes.
is of the people that we bring in for an in-person, I know in-person is different now, but of the people we bring in and take however many people away from their jobs to talk to this person, what percentage of people do we hire? The best I've ever gotten is 75%. So 3 out of 4 people that we brought in, we hired, because we were relentless at optimizing the pipeline before that. I would look at the top of the funnel and I work with the recruiters like, okay, how do we optimize what's coming in? Okay, on the phone screen, how do we tweak this phone screen to make sure that everything that gets through is a great candidate? So along the way in each of those gates, really optimizing it and making sure that we weren't just like letting crap through, because then it gets really expensive at the end. If you're asking, not only is it expensive from a company side, but also on a morale thing of like, oh my gosh, these are the people they're bringing in. Like,
it makes you feel like you're not valuable. This is what you'll accept.
Yeah, exactly. So those are
hiring sorceress
or wizard.
Or wizard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I like that. And we have lots of web seminars on how to get into the deeper techniques associated with that. All right. Another quality, value output.
Is forward. Everything has to be forward. You talk about failing forward, falling forward, whatever visualization that you have to focus on is, again, it's your job. At first, you're going to have to drag the team, right? We talked about a new team. They're just getting together. You're going to have to, everything's hard for them. Right? They're discovering everything for the first time. And it's never going to be a good time to do anything. It's never going to be a good time to change the way we do code reviews or to change our source control or to change a framework. It's never going to be a good time. But if you create this culture where we allow things to be, there's an old study about broken windows in urban settings where, where if a window's broken, the
more
likelihood
windows will
that
be
there's
broken.
going to be another window broken goes up.
Yeah.
So the importance of fixing those broken windows.
It's called the broken glass theory, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah. It's and what's his name? Giuliani used it to become the New York City Mailer. Anyways, keep going. It's actually keep going.
Yeah. So what you want to do is look at your city and say, okay, where are the broken windows? And you got to scurry and get those fixed, because otherwise kids, I did this, would walk past a building and say, oh, there's broken windows in there. I'm going to throw some rocks because it clearly doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's no value here. I might pee and it's hard to say that, but I might do something like that in the corner because nobody cares.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Right. So you set the tone with everything you do as a leader on making sure that, hey, if there's little cracks, let's patch them, because otherwise those become big cracks. And now the cost to replace all those windows in that building, let's just tear it down.
So I got a question, and I know you want to keep on the leadership side. I mean, the leadership abilities and skills, but Catherine says, can you talk about how to navigate depths of relationships as people move into leadership and management? So this is what she says. For people taking the first step from Scrum Master into something less embedded, so now you're becoming a leader outside of just a team, I've observed a sense of loss in those deep relationships. You have in a mature, psychologically safe Scrum team into a broader but shallow, I can't even say that word, shallow network.
Yeah.
Very interesting. What's your thoughts on that? I have some thoughts too, but what's your thoughts on that?
Leading is lonely.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. I'm so glad you said that. That's when somebody starts a business, when I do business coaching, I say it's the loneliest job you're going to have.
Yes. And
okay, great. Number one. Absolutely. We both agree.
So yeah, it's lonely because those deep relationships can create challenges.
Yes.
They can create challenges for the people you have a relationship with. Be like, oh, well, you're just so-and-so's buddy.
Yes.
So, you know, you're gonna
yes.
whatever. And you might have had a discussion with that person. Like, listen, this is never gonna, like, this is, I'm in this role, you're in this role. Whenever we go out for lunch, we're not talking about work, right? But people don't know that. Unfortunately, the human race has a tendency to, when there's a gap in knowledge, fill it with negative thoughts.
Yes.
So
we're pessimistic. That's our natural tendency through evolution is pessimism. Absolutely.
Yes. And as a leader and as an organization, this is something you have to talk to people within your team about, is it does me no good to take the problems I'm wrestling with in my role and put them on somebody else that has no capability to attack those problems. They have their own problems. Yes. And now you're putting these bigger problems that are on their shoulder, and they're thinking about it like, oh man, gosh, what's, and then again, they start to fill in gaps. Like, are we gonna have a job? Are we like, is this gonna work? What's going on? So you have to learn about appropriate time and place and people to have the discussion with, so that you're not unloading on people, because that's not fair to them. And people that work together can do the same thing, not intentionally. So you have, what I found is I have a buddy that I can.
You have a commiseration buddy outside of the structure.
Yep.
That's a number 2.
Yep.
Yes.
Someone that I can vent to, and they'll nod their head and say, okay,
yes.
You done yet? Okay, good.
I have that in every gig. Gig. When I ran the company, I had a commiseration guy. Man, we are best buddies. He was way outside the fray. And man, it helps you with your sanity. But let's go back to the relationship side, because she's right. Your relationships are going to change. They have to change as you take on different leadership roles.
And one thing that people might perceive as backwards about me is, there have been times where I've joined a new company and we did stand up a team quick, and I hired people that I knew and trusted and were actual like friends of the family. Like my kids know them. They've been here. We've done things like that. And I've hired them. And I feel a massive responsibility to help them in their career. So I feel like I have to be more upfront with you because you're my friend, because I don't want you looking back in a couple of years when we're out to dinner doing something and you're like, wait a minute, you knew that back then and you didn't say anything? Like table flip. That's not something you should do with people that are that close to you. So I'm actually, I mean, I don't know the right word, but I'm more harsh on people that are close to me, because I feel this responsibility to help them grow in the ways that they want to. And I don't ever want to have them look back and be like, you jerk, like you took the easy way out and didn't have the tough discussion with me. I'm gonna do that with everybody that's a part of the organization, but with the people that are close to me, I'm even more.
It's interesting, because I saw that I've worked with a lot of family-owned businesses, and I see the dichotomy of some of the, when they manage their kids, they manage them harshly, like and it was wild to watch. And, but then I saw the other side where the kids could basically do whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
I try not to hire anybody I know very closely. I'll reference them to other jobs, but I've found that it's difficult. It's difficult to make honest decisions with them. It's difficult to have to do things, related to the business and separate the business from the personal. But if you could do that, it's great. And you have a technique for that. But those deep relationships is hard, Catherine. And the thing with the deep relationships is, everything changes. And it's not that you don't care about them. It's just that you can't care about them at that level that you were caring for them before. They have somebody new to do that. So communicating with them, still asking them questions from time to time, still connecting with them, giving them an opportunity to talk with you, maybe not every day, but you're opening the door. The relationship can stay, but it stays at a different level. And you reinforce the fact that now they have somebody else to work on and help them build their career, which might have, I might have given you confirmation bias. So this new person might open some great doors for you, right? But I'm not walking away and I want to hear from you. I'm just going to communicate with you differently. Does that make any sense, Josh?
Yeah, it does. The first thing we said is it's lonely.
It's lonely.
You have to just accept that. It's like, personal story, went through a divorce last year. And the first talk I had with my lawyer is like, listen, half your money's gone. The sooner you can get over that, the better this is going to go. She's like, I don't care. You can cry, you can whine. It doesn't matter. Half of it's gone. So just get over that. And then we can work through the things that there is some control over, but just get over it. And that's harsh and like, just get over it. But you have to accept the reality is you are now in a more lonely spot in a handful of different ways. Getting your next job, there's 10x fewer roles that are out there.
That's right. When you take, that's exactly, they're number
one. As
one.
you progress up, it's like 10x again. So then you get to the CXO roles, and there's a handful that are open at any point in time, and maybe they're good companies and maybe they're not.
Yeah.
So just know that in that evolution with your career, it's gonna get more lonely. So one of the things that I do with CXOs is I grab time with them and I sit down and I say, just how are you?
Yeah.
Because I know no one asks them that question. They are always, we talked about the firefighting mode, it all rolls uphill. So they've got to deal with everything. And
nobody asked them.
Right.
And also they can't show it. Like as a leader, I had to be very careful about my body language, how I carried myself in the organization, because they would read these things. And it was scary sometimes, and how they would read things and it come to the negative thoughts because of my body language or how I was acting that day. It's interesting that side. But now let's talk about leadership that's not going up, but leadership that grows within your current job. So leadership as a verb. So we all grow as leaders, and it's like, Agile, first you lead yourself. What are some ways that people can grow as a leader within their current structure instead of going up? They're broadening their impact on others within the context of their work.
So one of the things that I expect of myself and leaders that are a part of my organization, which when I have an organization, I tell everybody that you are a leader. I don't have team lead roles because I don't want to create that separation of only these people can lead and everybody else has to follow. Like that's not how I build an organization. That's how strongly I feel about it. And what I believe is that something a great leader does is when things are going poorly, they step forward and protect the team. When things are going really well, they step back and push everybody else out front and say, these are the people that made it happen. Those two are very important. Oftentimes a leader doesn't do those things. So there are things you can do as a member of a team to just let other people shine. There's so many folks that, and again, it's with good intent. So we're in a meeting, we're trying to get to an answer. There's a team lead or something like that knows the answer and like, hey, we can get that answer, we can move on. Cool, done. We solved that problem in the meeting, but we've created another for our culture. There are times where the most important thing that leader can do is just shut up. And let the rest of the team work to an answer. That doesn't mean you like zip your lip completely, but you let them start the process.
That's interesting. Elaborate more. Hey, that kind of makes sense, but can you explain it a little differently? Let the conversation flow, right? And the other thing I think about too is leadership as a verb. You were talking about a gentleman who hated Agile on the text, right? And we came to the conclusion he probably is Agile, but he just gets frustrated when new Agile people come in. And maybe there's part of that is mentoring. How do we help others? So if we're in the team, like you talked about, how do we mentor and help others grow is kind of that, for me, a next stage of your Agile transformation, because you're realizing it's not just about you. It's first about you and how you work, then it's about others. What's your thoughts on that as a leadership growth for a team member to look at the value of mentoring and supporting?
So when I'm building an organization, I have what I call spheres of influence. And as you go from an engineer 1 to an engineer 2, like engineer 1, you focus on yourself being good. Engineer 2, now your responsibility is to like make sure you're still good with yourself, but also how are we doing as a team? you start to help that team be good. And it's part of your responsibility. And part of the things we're going to talk about in one-on-ones is like, hey, how are you doing with this? Is there anything I can help you with that? And giving them the tools to do that, because maybe they haven't done that. Then engineer 3 goes up a level, and then 4 goes up a level. And you still have to do all those things. You still have to do all 4 levels.
Yeah.
But now you are trying to influence more broadly. So making sure, and this is where I've been into some challenging discussions with engineers who thought that they should be promoted because they were the best coder. Yes, you are the best coder in this building without a doubt. It is
the number one mistake that happens in promoting people to a leadership position. You promote the person who's really good at it. Look at sports. Very few of the best sports athletes become good coaches.
Right.
Sales, it's the worst, by the way, Josh. Sales, this happens so much. And what is the mindset of a successful salesperson? It's very selfish. It's very self-oriented. But that's okay, because they're trying to drive a number. Take that as the best person who does that and tries to manage the team. It's a catastrophe.
So
that's a really good point. We got a couple minutes left. How would you like to finish up?
I got a couple common pitfalls that I want to make sure people step out. We talked about putting your knowledge and experience on a shelf. Don't do that. You're smart. You have great experience. Put it to power. Just like wield it carefully. Don't put it in the sheath and leave it in there and let it rust. Like wield it carefully. Make sure you celebrate the small wins, because those big wins take a long time to build up. So do that for your own mental health. Don't over-engineer processes. Remember, minimum viable bureaucracy was the least amount of process that you can put in place. That's your job. What's the smallest thing I can change? Not knowing your role. So I talked about, as a former engineer, I might walk past somebody on a whiteboard and I hear something, I get excited, like, ooh, that sounds fun to talk about. And like I step in and I create a distraction or things like that. Or like, I'm not doing a thing that I should be doing. Like I'm not focusing on what I should focus on, because me focusing on the things I should be focusing on enable more of that to happen. Now, I admit there's times where I'm having a bad day and I'll just sit with a group in front of a whiteboard and say, pretend I'm not here. I'm just going to.
But you're transparent about that. That's what I had to do. I had to get to the point and leaving the company and say, guys, I'm in a really bad mood today. So it just is what it is. You know, just understand that. Don't take it for what it is. And I'll try to control myself and stay away from the fray. I could heal myself by going and sitting with smart people on a whiteboard working through a problem. So I sit there, I'm like, pretend I'm not here. I'm just like mentally healing. It's making you feel better.
Yeah, just like let me soak it up, please. And
mine was getting on business development calls. Like when I was in a bad mood, I would move and have some business development calls, some relationship calls, and that helped me kind of get my mojo back and deal with all the other stuff going on.
And don't fall in love with your process. Don't fall in love with what you have created, because that will make you stagnant, and stagnant is bad. So qualities, we go back to the qualities. Number 1, you have to be selfless. Two, you have to listen. And then 3, patience. Like those are the things that if you have those 3 things, of course, there's all the other things like being smart helps, having experience, like all the standard stuff. But those 3 things, if you layer those on top of what you already have, that's going to enable you to really grow as an Agile leader.
Great. All right, folks. First and foremost, if you think your team can be helped by Josh, what's the best way to have those folks contact you?
LinkedIn. I'm Josh Anderson on there. My company is called Kazi, so you can find me at heyazi.io. And there's a ton of ways to get a hold of me.
All right. And then we're going to have Josh back for other sessions, I'm hoping. We're going to have a recording of this. You'll get the recording. You can share the recording out to those folks as well. We thank you very much for joining us. If you have follow-up questions, you can send those questions to us in LinkedIn, because we can answer either one of us. You'll find us very easily on LinkedIn. And with that said, we're going to let you go off and have a great rest of your day. Mr. Anderson, thank you so much.
All right, you bet. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Thank you all.